Hello everybody, I'm Kelly, also known as Sir Rainbow Sky Child, and today I want to discuss a movie that people say is charismatic, melodramatic, problematic. We're talking about Grease Lightning! I know that the movie is called Grease, I just couldn't get that to work, so deal with that. When I was a kid, Grease was only about 20 years old and
how the fuck is it only 20 years old? I was born in the 90s and that was like 100 years later, so like what the fuck?
When I was a kid, Grease was only about 20 years old. But even though it was already a little bit dated, it was still all the rage. Kind of like how 20 years ago Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban was released, but it's still very much talked about today. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is 20 years old. One moment, please. Hi, yes, hello, is this the old age home? Yes, this is Sir Rainbow Sky Child speaking. I would like to move in. Like Titanic, I grew up watching Grease, and I have seen this movie dozens upon dozens of times. I never get sick of it. I love its soundtrack and listen to it frequently. I will sing along to the songs when I watch this movie, and I will defend Grease fervently, because it's one of my absolute favorites. But who, you may be asking, do I have to defend Grease against? Well, everyone. People who don't like musicals, people who don't like John Travolta, people who don't like antiquated film, and BuzzFeed and Gen Z. See, a few years ago, when people started really driving and pushing the idea of inclusivity and diversity in storytelling, and they retroactively started cancelling all of the stories that have ever existed, BuzzFeed kinda jumped on the bandwagon of this and 100% forced the idea that Grease is a problematic movie that belongs in the unfeminist trash can because ultimately it's about a girl who changes everything about herself for a man! So come with me as I revisit this legendary musical while I do my best to look like I come from 1959 with limited resources and even more limited skills. Grab a cuppa or something stronger, and let's get started on this absolute roller coaster of a movie that includes everything, including hand-jiving, racism, drag racing, horny teenagers, predatory old men, pregnancy scares, and most importantly, 30-year-old teenagers. Grease opens with our two main characters, Danny and Sandy, who are hanging out and falling in love and canoodling and cavorting on the beach during their summer vacation. It's all wonderful and lovely and fine and well, but Sandy is concerned that she'll never see Danny again because she has to go back to Australia. Danny tries to make the most of their time together, if you know what I mean, but Sandy doesn't want him to. She asks him if this is the end of their romance, he tells her it's not, and then we cut to an unnecessarily long, probably drug-induced fever dream of an opening sequence. Seriously, it goes on for 3 minutes and 23 seconds. Also, they do Stockard Channing so dirty in this opening sequence. Like, what the fuck is this? So we head to Rydell High School, the first day of the year. We're introduced to the T-Birds, a greaser gang including Doody, Sonny, Patsy, Kaniki, and their leader, Danny. The boys reunite after their summer break and they start catching up, and we learn that Kaniki spent his entire vacation working because he's saving up for a car. Danny implies that he got some action on the beach, but doesn't really go into detail about what happened with Sandy.
I did meet this one chick. She was sort of cool.
As for the rest of them, it's not really important.
You want to hear what I did?
No.
Then we learn that Sandy never actually went back to Australia, and she is a student at Rydell High. She gets shown around by Frenchie, one of the Pink Ladies, a greaser girl clique that also includes Marty, Jan, and their leader, Rizzo.
And we're gonna rule the school.
We see Sandy get lost, but she makes it to class just in time for a very important announcement.
The National Bandstand television show has selected Rydell as a representative American high school and will do a live broadcast from our very own gym.
So I'm gonna show you the first look now. The first one is based on Kaniki. Look at how accurate it is. I mean, I've got the white t-shirt, I've got the leather jacket, I've got the blue jeans, I've got the boots, I've even got the white socks, and I've got like this round necklace thing, which is actually just a little Pokemon necklace that I put on the wrong way around. But I mean, I'm pretty proud of this one. I know it's slapdash, but I mean, come on. Anyway, back to the rambling. So it's lunch and we're with the Pink Ladies. Frenchie introduces Sandy to the Pink Ladies, and we also meet the insufferable cheer captain Patty, who invites Sandy to try out for the cheer team. We also learn that Rizzo is a bit of a mean girl who thinks Sandy is too much of a goody two-shoes to have what it takes to be a Pink Lady because she's too pure, too innocent, and too soft. Then we see the boys being boys. They're bullying each other.
Are you kidding? If I eat that, I'll smell like you.
They're objectifying women.
I mean, her jugs were bigger than her nets.
Nobody's jugs are bigger than her nets.
They're also sexually harassing women. Back with the girls, Sandy mentions that she met a boy during the summer, and Rizzo plucks the words right out of my mouth.
Well, he was sort of special.
There ain't no such thing.
And so we are launched into the first song of this movie, Summer Nights, in which Sandy and Danny describe their encounter with each other to their respective friends. As Sandy tells the girls about the romance, we learn that all women want is money and material possessions.
Tell me more, like does he have a car?
And as Danny tells his side of the story, we also learn that boys only want one thing.
Sex.
Also, what are you doing, Kaneki? During the song, Danny blatantly lies about what happened with Sandy at the beach, but we can tell that he genuinely likes her, and he's just exaggerating so he can look cool in front of his friends.
Wonder what she's doing now.
The girls find out that Sandy is talking about our boy Danny Zuko.
Hey, what was his name? Danny Zuko.
But they don't tell her that he goes to Rydell High School. Not yet. First, we head to a sports rally at the school where Sandy makes her debut as a cheerleader and kinda glabs it up. She also starts flirting with a jock. I think his name is Tom, but I don't know. I don't remember. He's kind of sort of insignificant. So from this moment forward, I'm just gonna call him the jock. Meanwhile, the boys are objectifying women again.
Do a split, give a yell, shake the tits are all right there.
Because, I mean, come on, didn't you know the only thing that 18-year-old boys think about is tits? Kaneki shows up in his new, very much beat-up fixer-upper car, and the T-Birds laugh at him, but he explains that he's going to remodel the car so that he can use it for street racing. Right on cue, their rival gang, the Scorpions, show up. Kaneki and Doody are ready for them. Kaneki is armed with a knife, and Doody is armed with a water pistol. But don't worry, they don't get in a fight. The Scorpions just blow them off, and it's actually really funny. So the Pink Ladies think it's about time to give Sandy her big surprise, and they take her over to where Danny is. At first, Danny is elated to see her.
Sandy!
But then he remembers that he is with his friends, so he snubs her instead.
What's the matter with me, baby? What's the matter with you?
Hurt, Sandy insults him and storms off.
You're a fake and a phony, and I wish I'd never laid eyes on you.
Frenchie follows her to comfort her and invites her to a sleepover in the hopes that it will cheer her up. Sandy obliges, so we cut to the sleepover, but she's a little bit of a fish out of water with the Pink Ladies. Eventually, she caves to peer pressure and tries a cigarette, and she participates in underage drinking, and she's even coaxed into letting Frenchie pierce her ears for her. All of this is a little bit too much, and Sandy falls ill and escapes to the bathroom to go and throw up. While she's in there, Frenchie is telling the Pink Ladies that she's going to drop out of high school and go to beauty school instead, and Marty is telling Rizzo about her many, many boyfriends. And we get this very uncomfortable line.
Personally, I'm getting rather chilly.
Hey, what's that?
From Bobby in Korea.
Are you going with a Korean?
Dummy's a Marine.
So then Rizzo and the Pink Ladies burst into song mocking Sandy and her purity, her innocence.
Keep your filthy paws off my silky drawers.
It's all fun and games until Sandy returns and catches them in the act.
You're making fun of me, Riz?
The boys show up, so Rizzo sneaks out with hopes that she will, and I quote, get her kicks while she's young enough to get 'em. She flirts with Kaneki, who is all too willing, so he abandons the T-Birds and drives off with her. So Sandy launches into another iconic song, Hopelessly Devoted. She expresses her conflicted feelings because on the one hand, Danny is not who she thought he was, but on the other, she's still in love with him and hoping that he'll come around. She's waiting for him, so to speak. Hopelessly Devoted is a gem in this world, a gem that we did not deserve. Olivia Newton-John did such a perfect job of it, and it's just such a special song that so perfectly encapsulates the conflict that she's feeling.
Since you pushed my love aside, I'm out of my head.
And this beautiful moment is ruined when she has a Mufasa moment with his face in a kiddie pool. I couldn't make that up if I tried. Anyway, so we cut to Rizzo and Kaniki, who are making the cringiest noises you will ever hear while they're making out in his car. I mean, seriously, y'all are just kissing? Calm down! Things are getting heated, but Kaniki came prepared. So while he's getting ready, he realizes that the condom he bought when he was like 13 years old has broken, and they don't actually have protection. But the two of them are too horny to control themselves, so they decide to go for it anyway.
What the hell?
But they are interrupted by the arrival of the Scorpions' leader, Leo, or as he's known throughout this movie, Craterface. It is here that the greatest delivery of the greatest line in all of cinema is uttered by our boy, Kaniki.
You parked in a no parking zone, creep.
The whole place a no parking zone, Craterface.
It's legendary. I love it so much. I swear it is my favorite line in all of cinema. Next, we see the boys working on Kaniki's car. Doody, Patsy, and Sunny mock the condition that it's in, but Danny has a vision for this vehicle. So we launch into what is probably the most iconic song from this movie and the musical and probably all musicals that have ever existed in all of time.
Well, I could be Grease Lightning.
But I need to tell you something. So you know how I said that I grew up watching this movie? I have always loved the song Greased Lightning, like since I was, I want to say, 4 or 5 years old. And I never paid attention to the lyrics until recently, and I got the shock of my life. Do you know what the song is about? Obviously, I can't play the song. Where's my phone? Obviously, I can't play the song for you because, you know, I'll get a copyright strike. But what I can do is read its lyrics for you. We'll get some overhead lifters, then some 4-barrel quads. Oh yeah. Keep talking. Whoa, keep talking. A fuel injection cutoff and chrome-plated rods. Oh yeah. I'll get the money. I'll kill to get the money. With a 4-speed on the floor, they'll be waiting at the door. You know that ain't no shit. We'll be getting lots of tit. Grease Lightning. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Go, Grease Lightning. You're burning up the 1/4 mile. Grease Lightning. Go, Grease Lightning. Go, Grease Lightning. You're coasting through the heat lap trials. Grease Lightning, go Grease Lightning. You are supreme. The chicks will cream for Grease Lightning. Go, 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 go. We'll get some purple fringe taillights and 30-inch fins, oh yeah. Ooh, a Palomino dashboard and dual muffler twins, oh yeah. Ooh, with new pistols, plugs and shocks. I can get off my rocks. You know that I ain't bragging. She's a real pussy wagon. Grease Lightning, go, 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 go. What? I don't pay attention to these things. I am shook. I'm shook. Listen, if you also did not know what that song was about until now, you owe me that comment, okay? Anyway, let's continue. After this spectacular description of what the car could be, the other T-Birds are fully on board with fixing up this car. Then we cut to some more tension between the T-Birds and the Scorpions before Danny stumbles upon Sandy on a date with the jock. And this displeases him, of course. And then we get more misogyny.
I don't know about these chicks.
Yeah, they're only good for one thing.
Then what are you supposed to do with him for the other 23 hours and 45 minutes of the day?
Danny takes an opportunity to apologize to Sandy and admits that he was an ass. He also explains to her that he just wanted to, play himself up to his friends because he has a certain image that he has to uphold when he's around them. But Sandy doesn't really care. She makes him feel inferior to the jock, and Danny sees this as a challenge.
And what have you ever done?
Oh, come on. I can run circles around those jerks.
I'll believe that when I see it.
So Danny decides that he's going to go out of his way to prove that he could run laps around the jock, so he signs up for the sports.
First thing we have to do is you have to change.
Well, I know that's why I'm here, to change.
No, I mean your clothes.
Oh.
But he's really fucking terrible at them and fails at baseball, at basketball, and at wrestling, so the coach recommends track and field instead. Danny rises to the challenge, so he takes up running, and while trying to impress Sandy and also distract her from the jock, he faceplants. Sandy is very concerned about him, chases after him to make sure that he's okay, and the two reconcile. So the two of them go on a date, but their friends interfere and ruin it for them, so they bail. Patsy and Jan start developing feelings for each other, Rizzo and Kaniki have a falling out and break up, and we learn that Frenchie was not cut out for beauty school and decided to drop out. And so we get the song, Beauty School Dropout. Now, apparently this scene depicts Frenchie's guardian angel literally coming down from heaven to guide her, which is ridiculous enough as it is, right? But it's made even funnier by the fact that he's so mean to her.
But no customer would go to you unless she was a hooker.
Imagine you ask your guardian angel for help and they come down from heaven to sing you a song that is literally just denigrating you. So it's time for the bandstand, that huge deal TV show that's being filmed at the school, which I think I forgot to mention is also a dance competition. But the problem for Rizzo and Marty is that they don't have dates. So in a moment of spontaneity, Rizzo decides that she's going to pursue Craterface of all people. Now, this whole dance goes on for like 20 minutes, so I'm just gonna skim through the important parts. Rizzo shows up with Craterface, but Kaniki shows up with Craterface's girlfriend Cha-Cha, and there's tension between the four of them the entire time. Marty is starstruck by the old man TV show host who is a little bit too eager to get with a teenage girl. We also get this scene later on in the movie.
I caught him in Fontaine trying to put aspirin on my coke at the dance.
Ew! Sandy finds out that there's a history between Danny and Cha-Cha. The dance-off begins, everybody else gets eliminated, Danny and Sandy do really, really well, they make it all the way to the end, but then they're sabotaged and Danny ends up winning with Cha-Cha instead. Next, we're at a drive-in movie where Sandy is still upset that Danny ended up dancing with Cha-Cha. Danny tries to apologize and he gives her his ring as a sign of good faith. Sandy very much appreciates this because to her, it's a sign that she really does mean something to him, that he really respects her. Rizzo tells Marty that she missed a period and she thinks she's pregnant. Marty blabs, and the secret spreads like wildfire all the way to Kaniki, who is super eager to take responsibility for this, but Rizzo, who is still mad at him, lies and says it's not his, and he is hurt and walks away from her. Back with Danny and Sandy, Danny tries to score, but he's a little bit too pushy, and Sandy is naturally and justifiably disgusted by his behavior, so she dumps him, throws his ring back at him, and storms off. So Danny laments.
Stranded at the drive-in.
When I tell you, I have never laughed as hard as I did rewatching this song.
Why? In heaven.
I need to compose myself. Okay, where were we? Greased Lightning is ready for the race and the boys are stoked. Kaniki asks Danny to be his second in the race and the two have a very sweet moment. But this is Grease, so that moment is ruined by their toxic masculinity. Back at school, Rizzo is the subject of everybody's snark and gossip, So she and Sandy share their only gentle moment. And then Rizzo sings a song about how the worst thing she could do in this world is show any weakness to Kaniki. Back to the boys, it's the day of the race, and Craterface has upped the ante by declaring that they're racing for each other's cars. Marty tries to help Kaniki by forcing a little bit of lack upon him, but it backfires. He hits his head on his own car, he is knocked out, he can't drive, and Danny has to take over. Sandy shows up to watch, but she keeps her distance. Danny wins the race, Craterface is humiliated, and Sandy contemplates whether Rizzo was right and she is maybe a little bit too innocent for her own good. So she approaches Frenchie for help because she has something up her sleeve. Forward to the last day of school, where we get this absolute perfect moment. The seniors celebrate the end of their high school era with a fair. Here we find out that Rizzo's situation was a false alarm. She's not actually pregnant, so she and Kaniki reconcile. More importantly, we see that Danny has turned over a new leaf. He arrives in a Letterman jacket of all things, and goes on to explain that while the rest of the T-Birds were goofing around, he was actually working really hard and he earned his letter fair and square. The T-Birds aren't too impressed by this because they think that Danny has gone soft and that he will abandon them, to which Danny says this.
Come on, guys, you know you mean a lot to me. It's just as Sandy does too, and I'm gonna do anything I can to get her, that's all.
Then Sandy shows up. And she's a new person too. She is decked out in leather, she's done her hair up, and she's even smoking a cigarette. Now would be the perfect time to show you the second outfit. I don't have heels and I don't have red shoes, so these boots are as good as it's gonna get. So, oh wait, sorry, something is missing from this. There we go. What do you think? It's not as perfect as Kaniki's was. This is actually the reason why I wanted to talk about Grease, because I was organizing my clothes cupboard and I remembered that I have leather pants and I have a leather jacket and I was like, I could do Grease. But yeah, it's not perfect. I realize that it's not perfect, but deal with that. And then she takes her jacket off. She drops the cigarette as well. But this is just a vest, so I'm thinking if I do that, sorry for how weird this is gonna look, and do that, then maybe it'll be a little bit more accurate to her outfit. Back to the rambling. I really want to just continue filming like this because it looks so much more like Sandy's outfit this way, but it's so cold. So Sandy shows up and she's a new woman, and Danny is stunned by this, obviously. So the two duet You're the One That I Want, one of my favorite songs from this movie. And the song is basically Sandy telling Danny that he needs to get his shit together because she needs a man and she wants him to be that man, and Danny agreeing with her and promising that he will change his ways and become that man for her. Afterwards, the girls express fear that once they leave high school, the gang will fall apart and never see each other again. Danny assures them that that is absolutely not going to happen, and the entire school bursts into song about how they will be best friends forever. And the movie ends with Danny and Sandy driving off into the sky. And that's Grease! Now let's talk about it. Grease was an absolute hit back in its day. Its original run grossed $132,472,560. By today's standard, that would be just under $700 million. It was a huge commercial success. It was the highest grossing film of 1978, and it was so successful, it pushed The Sound of Music out of its spot as the highest grossing musical. I feel like Grease was inescapable in the 90s and also the early 2000s. And again, this was 20 or so years after it was actually released. The film has staying power. It's even still relevant today. But as I said, for the wrong reasons. Here's what the Wikipedia page has to say under the reception section for this movie. Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times gave a negative review, writing, quote, "I didn't see Grease on stage, but on the testimony of the strident, cluttered, uninvolving, and unattractive movie, it is the 50s, maybe the last innocent decade allowed to us, played back through a grotesquely distorting 70s consciousness," end quote. Goes on to say, in recent years, the film has been reassessed for what some critics have deemed as discriminatory and problematic content. Bryn Gelbart from Business Insider wrote that the film had not aged well, describing it as preaching an unfortunate message with aspects that could be considered regressive by today's standards. Kristen Baldwin of Entertainment Weekly wrote that the ending of the film was decidedly unfeminist. Katie Hall of the Sydney Morning Herald said that the film was deeply problematic, but also ahead of its time. Joe Hildebrand of news.com.au defended the film, saying that it isn't horribly sexist and offensive, it's just that its characters say and do horrible, sexist and offensive things, ... In short, they're a lot like, well, people. A 2020 showing of the film on the BBC drew complaints from viewers and renewed criticism. Olivia Newton-John responded to the criticism, calling the comment silly and saying that the film isn't meant to be taken so seriously. I've got to agree with her. I don't like to play the "but it was a different time" card, because I feel like often people use that card to justify blatant cruelty, blatant discrimination, blatant racism, blatant homophobia, blatant misogyny, what have you. A lot of storytelling from the past was tasteless, and the fact that it comes from the past doesn't make it any less cruel. An offensive joke at somebody else's expense that was told in the 90s is still an offensive joke at somebody else's expense. The fact that it was told in the 90s doesn't actually make it any less offensive. But what does this have to do with Grease? Well, Grease was made in the 1970s, which really was a different time. In fact, the 1970s was a completely different world. If we have to watch a movie from the 1990s, they still have some semblance of mobile phones, they still have email, they still have modern computers, modern music. The 90s is still somewhat familiar to us. The 2000s even more so. But in the 70s, it was very, very different. They didn't have mobile phones. Their fashion was completely different to what we wear now. In fact, computers as a whole were still in their infancy. So much so that the first commercial home computer to hit the market did so in 1977, a year before this movie was released. This is how different the world was back when Grease was on circuit. I mean, we're talking about an era where people weren't fully aware of how dangerous smoking cigarettes is, because there wasn't enough research supporting the idea that cigarettes will kill you. But also, storytelling was different. The storytellers of the 70s didn't fear cancellation because their movies weren't diverse or inclusive enough, or because they said something mildly inappropriate in one of their films. But of course, some movies were still massively controversial in the 1970s. A Clockwork Orange is from the 1970s, and it's one of the most controversial stories of all time. It came under fire because of its brutality and because people suspected that kids were being influenced by it and were acting out violently because of the film. The second most controversial film of the 1970s, as far as I can see at least, is one called Carnal Knowledge, and it came under fire because of how it addressed sex and how it portrayed sex. So I have a feeling that in the 1970s, and by the way, if you are older and if you remember the 70s, please come and either confirm or correct me on this, but I have a feeling that in the 1970s, offense and controversy were so different from what it is now. And we're talking about the general masses here, obviously, not individuals who have different circumstances or who were being oppressed at the time. We're just talking about society in general, the literal general masses. But I feel like people only really took offense to things if the controversy centered around this fear of society as a whole and in and of itself being corrupted. Because protecting people's feelings and identities just wasn't a priority, it wasn't a concern, it wasn't even a thought back then. So, for example, if a filmmaker had to mock or insult the church, society would probably set itself on fire. But a scene of a man peeping up a woman's skirt, or a scene of a woman shocked that her friend is talking to a Korean, weren't really that big a deal in the 1970s, because there was no reason for these things to be that big of a deal. Am I making sense? But, that said, Grease was told in the 1970s. It depicted the 1950s, and the 1950s was even further behind. I absolutely hate this critic. Who was it? Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times, who said that the 50s was maybe the last innocent decade allowed to us. Am I mistaken, or did black people still not have all of their rights in the USA in the 1950s? Weren't women still fighting for their rights in the 1950s? Weren't homosexuals still fighting for their rights? Excuse me, in the 1950s. Do you want to know what 1950s South Africa was like? My point is that Grease is not a controversial movie. It wasn't controversial in the 1970s, and even if it did meet mild criticism, I'm assuming that that would have been because it depicted girls who were just as sexually voracious as the teenage boys around them, girls who pursued sexual conquests to the same degree as the teenage boys around them. The 50s is often portrayed as the single most stuffy time in history, but Grease portrayed it through the 1970s lens. The same way that Stranger Things is set in the 80s, but it's told through the 2010s and 2020s lens. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of people believe and say that Grease was actually progressive for its time. It's just that now we've progressed so far away from it that we can't see that value anymore. Sort of how the very first home computer to be popularized was the thing of science fiction in the 1970s. It was the most marvelous thing they had ever seen because, oh my god, it's a computer, how convenient, what magic is this? But to us, that very same computer literally looks like an electric-powered stone, like an electric-powered fossil. The same way that when we were teenagers in the 2000s, the first camera phone was like, wow, amazing, my mind is blown, I can take photos on my phone, look at this amazing quality. But now in 2024, if we have to look at those photos, it's like... But that's not to say that the first computer or the first couple of camera phones didn't have value when they were released. They were marvelous back then. They were peak society at the time that they were released. It's just that they have no value now because we have 2024 technology. And so we get to my biggest gripe. So many people complain that Grease was sexist because Sandy changes everything about herself to win Danny over. But y'all don't seem to realize that our boy, Danny Zuko, also changed himself for her. She didn't believe that he could ever be a decent person, so he went out of his way to become a decent person. And you'll constantly overlook that. I mean, literally, Danny starts off snubbing her in front of his friends because impressing them is more important than respecting her. Then when he realizes that he might have pushed her a little bit too far away and that she actually prefers the jock, he dedicates himself to proving that he is actually worth a damn. He does well in track, he earns his Letterman jacket, he tells his friends that he would do anything to get her, and then he sings a song about how he will change for her. And people are still mad because the woman decided to wear some leather to appear sexy for the man that she likes so that she could go to his playing field. People are still mad about that. They still make it seem like it's the most sexist piece of fiction to have ever existed, completely ignoring the fact that he did the same for her. Grease is a love story. Danny and Sandy love each other. Danny and Sandy change for each other. Danny and Sandy find their way back to each other. Danny and Sandy compromise for each other. It's a love story. And I'm so tired of people making it seem like it was just created to demean all women everywhere or teach girls a rotten lesson about how to win a man. That is not what this movie's about, and it makes me angry. I got rage, it's multiplying. Watching Grease again, as much as I enjoyed it, was just a cold reminder of how far storytelling has fallen. Stories can't really exist for the sake of being stories anymore. Even stories from decades ago are retroactively held to a standard they were never meant to meet. People nitpick a little bit too much and scrutinize a little bit too much, to the point that sensitivity editors are an actual real-world thing. What the fuck kind of dystopia do I live in? Grease can't just be a silly musical about some hooligans growing into their sexualities and enjoying their last year of high school. It can't just be a silly musical about a greaser and a perfect petunia, two people from two completely different worlds who have a brief fling in the summer and then get a second chance at their romance. It can't just be a silly musical about some naughty boys who went to Drag Race. It can't just be a silly musical. It can't just be fun. And that's what makes me angry. Grease was great then, and it's great now, and I 100% disagree with the people who say that it didn't age well, because yes, it did. It aged incredibly well as a silly musical about some hooligans who grow into their sexualities and enjoy their last year of high school. It aged well as a silly musical about a greaser and a perfect petunia, two people from two completely different worlds who have a brief summer fling and then get a second chance at their romance. It aged incredibly well as a silly musical. It aged incredibly well as a fun movie. The songs have held up, the performances have held up, the story has held up, the cinematography has held up. And Grease, the actual stage production that this movie was based on, is still going to this day. It has a 2024 run. Now, I want all of you BuzzFeeders and Gen Zers who don't like this movie because it's so problematic, and anybody who thinks that this movie is ridiculously problematic, so problematic that we need to wipe it from the face of the earth, I want all of you to tell me how well you think Stranger Things is going to hold up 46 years from now. How well do you think The Big Bang Theory or Young Sheldon or House of the Dragon, or the Avengers movie, or Rick and Morty, or Wednesday, or Riverdale, I don't know what people watch, The Office, whatever, the kids are doing these days. I want you to tell me how well you think today's entertainment is going to hold up 46 years from now. Because that's how old Grease is. So anyway, I'm gonna end off now by saying this. I love Grease, but you don't have to. You can criticize its songs or its antiquated quality, you can reel at its problematic scenes, and you can laugh at the 30-year-old teenagers as much as you want. But maybe, just maybe, if you watch it for what it is, and not what you want it to be, you might just find that you like it. And, more importantly, you might just find some value in it. Because at the end of the day, Grease is never going to be a movie that lives up to 2024 standards. It will always be a silly and fun musical about a bunch of teenagers who act way cooler than they actually are in their senior year of high school, enjoying their last moments of freedom before they grow up. And that's something that we can all relate to, don't you think?